Alan, thank you so much for joining me today.
My
Uh, I,
pleasure.
I appreciate your time. Congratulations on basically the completion of the first season of Tokyo Vice on HBO Max.
Thank you so much. It's been particularly exciting because HBO Max decided on the strategy of dropping two a week instead of just doling out the episode one a week, and so the sense of enthusiasm building up towards tomorrow's finale has been personally exciting for me to experience.
One of the things that I kind of enjoyed about it, and I saw other people talking about it, is it's frustrating pacing that it has, but it's with a purpose. It serves as a kind of just probably the way that guys got your material for it, but you think that something maybe was going to be resolved sooner, but then you have to take a couple of steps back, and it keeps you really, kept me hooked so far.
Well, I mean, I think the idea, especially in the first half of the season, is to really get you tied into our characters
Mhm.
and get to understand them and the difficult predicaments that each of them had, so that starting around episode five, we could begin to ratchet things up towards the finale. And I'm glad that people have hung in there with us because I think ultimately the idea was to reward everybody's patience with some great final episodes. And after last week, after episodes six and seven dropped, somebody remarked, "Oh, I guess we can't call the show a slow burn anymore," and I was very happy to read that. That's the idea.
Yeah, definitely invested in the characters, and I thought I thought it was a really good kind of strategy, as you were saying, the way that the first three episodes were dropped together, which really allowed people, like you said, to get to know the characters. Um, Tell me a little bit about some of the actors that you guys have, and how now we can be invested in with them. It's like Ansel and Ken Wantabi, Rachel, and how they've how you see them from your eyes.
Well, it was. I mean, we shot the season largely in sequence. There were some things we had
Oh,
to jump around a little bit, but so it meant that we're going into each episode as the relationships get deeper. It meant that my relationship with the actors as a director got deeper, also as a producer, and I felt like watching, especially with Ansel and Rachel and Kensan and Rinko and Hideaki Ito, who plays Miyamoto, and then of course and Sho Kasamatsu, who plays Sato, watching them really take over and take ownership of their characters, which is really hard to do at the outset of a new series, has been very rewarding because I think now, as soon as you see those characters on screen, you feel like you've lived through the season with them. And so everythit they do resonates even more.
yeah, it's quite the journey that you can have with them. One of the interesting things that I found is that it's loose, really on based loosely inspired
Yeah.
by Jake Adelstein in his experience, and you guys have him on board. What is that like to be able to take source material, but also have the person who wrote it?
Well, I think we needed to keep Jake pretty close because we were so hell bent on authenticity and in terms of what it was like, not just to be a reporter at a major daily newspaper in Japan in the late 90s, but to be the only foreign reporter at a newspaper. There's only one person who really understands the authenticity of that story, and that's Jake. And so, anytime, and he and JT, our writer, have known each other since high school. So, anytime something came up, like, would the editor come over and yell at him like this, or would the editor come from this way, or how would he choose to insult him, or anything that was particular to those stories, especially in the newsroom, we could just call up Jake, and Jake would say, "Well, when it happened to me, it happened like this," and then you've gone right to the source.
That's fantastic. As a journalist myself, who works, I work in a TV newsroom, of course, but it's really interesting to see kind of the dynamics of how they used to work together, and just the way that things happen in Tokyo. Being that it took place in the late '90s, you guys also shot on site in Tokyo. What were the challenges in kind of aging down the areas you were in?
Um, I would say that in terms of doing period, doing late 90s period, because it was such a specific time in Tokyo, the biggest single challenge is digiboards. That everywhere you go outside, what used to be
Uh,
neon or billboards is now digiboards. Fortunately, digiboards are fixed and they don't move, and so they're relatively easy to erase with VFX. So that was the first pass on everything, was get rid of the digiboards, and then you've taken a big step towards being period correct. And then also we found that going into some of the older nightlife districts in Tokyo, not necessarily always in Shibuya or Shinjuku where a lot of the story takes place, but finding areas like Ikebukuro or Ueno where things have not been quite as brought into the 21st century. It was much easier to find streets and alleys and exteriors that look much more like they did in the 90s.
Okay. Well, one of the toughest parts of my job is the fact that I get to watch things ahead of time, and I want to ask you so many questions about the
No
finale with
spoilers. No
Yoshino,
spoilers. Yeah,
because you directed the finale.
I did.
um, so tell us a little bit about what we can expect from the finale, just a little bit maybe with maybe, and then also just your experience in working with like Michael Mann and Joseph and Hiraki on as a group of directors for the series.
Well, first of all, in terms of Yoshino, the finale, there's not much I can say
I know.
except that one of the hardest things we had to do in promoting the show was cut together a sneak preview tease reel for this last episode because every scene has spoilers and every scene kind of pulls the rug out from under you. So we had to very carefully cherry pick parts of scenes that still looked exciting but weren't giving away what was really going on. So I'm really proud to say that I can't tell you anything. In terms of directors, Michael came in and shot the pilot and set the template and set the visual template for the show and set a kind of tonal standard. It was great, but then in shooting episodes 2 through 8, it was trade-offs between myself and Joseph and Hikari, and we had to be really tight as a team because there were many times where we had to shoot out of order. If there was a
Okay.
location that appeared in 5 of the 7 episodes left, but we only had that location for a week, we had to come in and trade off as directors and shoot a whole season's worth of scenes over the course of a couple of days. And so that meant that we all had to understand what was in each other's heads, where we were trying to go, so that there wouldn't be any kind of stylistic discord going from episode to episode.
All right. Well, I can tell you this at least, that in most scenes I had a reaction, and I think that's all I also want to give out, because because I think it should be enjoyed the same way I
Did
enjoyed
did
it.
did we surprise you, Emmanuel?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
and
That's all I need to hear.
yeah, I just try to be careful because or else I'll have to cut this cut this out.
No,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, I don't think fans of the series, if you've enjoyed it so far, if you enjoyed the character development, you're not going to be disappointed story wise. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you so much. I hope so.
You obviously have done this for a while. There's a couple of trinkets behind you that give away a little bit of your experience. What makes Tokyo Vice stand out from other shows?
Um, I think one thing is that I don't think this show looks like anything else that's ever been on TV. I think the idea of this full immersion in a foreign culture by a character who's already immersed in the culture is something, where your tour guide character already knows the territory. He still has a lot to learn. I think nobody's done that, and so I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to pull this off, because I do think it's not like anything you've seen before. And also for me, it was a huge full circle because I started my career in Japan. My academic field was Japanese literature, and I got drafted into working on my first film because of my knowledge of Japanese language and culture and cinema. And then in my career, I sort of done a couple decades of work that was not related to Japan. And so this is me coming back after a long absence, full circle to the country where I essentially got my professional start. So it was rewarding on a whole different level because of that.
So how did that feel for you, being able to kind of roam the town and kind of maybe even reminisce about your early days, and now to be where you are, filming a show with so much value, and then also being able to do the finale yourself as a director?
Well, it was, I mean, especially because I have nostalgia about Tokyo in the late 90s. That was especially nostalgic to sort of recreate places that were like the places where I had wandered the streets when I was younger. So that was very rewarding, and also to be able to reconnect with a lot of my Japanese friends. And then just because of COVID, we weren't allowed after a certain point to bring any new crew members in from outside Japan. So working with and it wasn't that way by design, but working in effect with an entirely Japanese crew for the last few episodes was enormously rewarding because they gave their all and their commitment to the project, and not just to supporting everything that JT wanted to express and that the directors wanted to express, but also becoming our willing partners in making sure that every single detail was authentic and wouldn't, rub a Japanese viewer the wrong way. It got the sense that we were very much all in this endeavor together, working towards a common goal, and that was really ingratiating for me.
I mean, how important is it to have Jake's story out there for the world to see that, journalists around the world don't necessarily have it as easy as we do here in the United States?
Well, I think journalists around the world right now are under assault in many places, and that Jake's experience, although there's a little life and death element in it, it's still, in terms of having the freedom to report, it still pales in comparison to what a lot of freedom-loving journalists are going through around the world right now. But I think if we can, through Jake's story, shed light on what a seminal profession it is and how much work goes into actually bringing the truth to light, then I think that we've done a service.
Alan, I think that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for watching,
Oh,
and hope everybody enjoys the finale.
I'm sure they will. It is as much as because there's certain things I want to come out of my mouth as
Yeah,
far as
no,
I want to ask you, and like I said before, and many people heard me say this before, it's like I have questions, but I can't have those questions answered until after
okay.
people see it.
Well, I'll come back. Ask me later.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hopefully, we do get to talk to you again,
Okay.
and I hope it was nice to virtually meet you.
Thank you.
All
Same
right,
here. Thanks so
take care.
much.